Desperate bear scratches the police station door. Officers follow him and discover something that made them cry. The small police station in Pine Valley, Montana, stood quietly against the backdrop of snow-covered mountains. Inside, Sheriff Emma Thompson and deputies Mark Anderson and Sarah Miller were going through their usual morning routine. The cramped but cozy station, heated by an old wood stove, had seen its fair share of minor disputes and local issues, but nothing that would prepare them for what was about to unfold on this frigid winter morning. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us from which city you're watching us. We keep going. The first sign that something was different came in the form of an unusual scratching sound at the wooden door. It wasn't the typical knock of a visitor or the shuffle of feet on the welcome mat. This was persistent, deliberate, and accompanied by low, anxious grunts that made everyone in the station freeze in place. Emma, a veteran of 15 years on the force, exchanged puzzled looks with her deputies before approaching the door. The scratching continued, more urgent now, punctuated by sounds that seemed almost pleading. Through the frost-covered window, they could make out a massive shape that made their hearts skip a beat. A magnificent grizzly bear standing, upright, its powerful paws working against the wooden door. "Stay back," Emma warned her deputies, though something in her gut told her this wasn't a typical wildlife encounter. The bear's behavior was unlike anything she'd seen in all her years. Living in Montana, there was no aggression in its posture, no sign of the typical territorial display they were trained to watch for. Instead, the animal's eyes held an intelligence and urgency that seemed almost human. Mark reached for his tranquilizer gun, but Emma held up her hand. "Wait," she said, studying the bear's behavior. "Look at its eyes. It's trying to tell us something." The bear backed away slightly from the door, its movements careful and deliberate. It would take a few steps away, then turn back to look at them, repeating this pattern with an obvious purpose. Sarah, who had grown up in these mountains and knew their wildlife better than most, recognized the behavior immediately. "Chief, I think it wants us to follow it," she said, her voice filled with wonder and concern. "I know it sounds crazy, but I've heard stories from my grandfather about animals seeking human help. Never thought I'd see it myself, though." Emma considered their options. Protocol dictated they should contact wildlife services and keep their distance. But something about this situation felt different. The bear's behavior was too specific, too intentional to ignore. Making a decision that would later be questioned by many, but ultimately change their community forever, she reached for her heavy winter coat. Mark grabbed the first aid kit and the emergency gear. Sarah, radio dispatch and let them know we're investigating an unusual wildlife situation, and both of you, keep your tranks ready, but only as a last resort. Something tells me this bear isn't here to harm us. As they prepared to head out, the morning sun was just beginning to paint the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold. The bear waited patiently, occasionally looking back as if to ensure they were following. Its massive form moved with surprising grace through the deep snow, leading them toward the dense forest that bordered their small town. "I've never seen anything like this," Mark whispered as they followed the animal's tracks. The bear maintained a steady pace, always staying just far enough ahead to be safe, but close enough to keep them in sight. It moved with purpose, clearly heading toward a specific destination. The forest around them was eerily quiet, the usual morning chorus of birds absent in the cold winter air. Their boots crunched through the fresh snow, creating the only sound besides their measured breathing. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something much bigger than a simple wildlife encounter. As they ventured deeper into the forest, following their unusual guide, Sarah noticed something that made her pulse quicken. "Chief," she called out softly, pointing to the ground. Mixed in with the bear's tracks were other marks in the snow, human footprints and signs of recent activity. The discovery added another layer of complexity to their already unusual morning. Emma's instincts, honed by years of service, told her they were about to uncover something significant. The bear continued to lead them forward, its behavior becoming more urgent as they progressed deeper into the wilderness. The morning sun now filtered through the snow-laden branches, creating an ethereal atmosphere in the forest. None of them spoke, each lost in their own thoughts about what might await them at the end of this strange journey. The bear's determined guidance and the mysterious human tracks in the snow were pieces of a puzzle they were yet to understand. But one thing was certain. This winter morning would become a turning point in their lives and in the history of Pine Valley. The tension grew as Emma, Mark, and Sarah followed the grizzly deeper into the snow-covered forest. Their breath formed small clouds in the frigid air as they carefully made their way through the dense undergrowth. The bear maintained its steady pace, occasionally looking back with those intelligent eyes that had first captured their attention at the station. The signs of human activity became more pronounced as they progressed. Broken branches and disturbed snow told a story of recent movement through the area. Sarah, with her expert tracking skills, noticed something that made her stomach tighten. "Chief," she whispered, pointing to a particular pattern in the snow. "These marks, they're consistent with someone trying to avoid being seen." Emma nodded grimly, her years of experience telling her this was more than just a random hiker passing through. The bear's urgency seemed to increase as they approached what appeared to be a clearing ahead. The animal's behavior became more anxious, its movements more deliberate as it led them forward. As they entered the clearing, the scene before them made their hearts sink. There, in the middle of the snow-covered ground, lay a bear cub, its small paw caught in what was clearly an illegal hunting trap. The sight was heart-wrenching, the young animal's exhausted form trembling from cold and pain, its eyes reflecting a mix of fear and exhaustion. The mother bear, who had led them all this way, now stood at a careful distance, her eyes fixed on her trapped offspring. Her behavior was remarkable. Instead of displaying the fierce protectiveness typical of mother bears, she maintained a calm demeanor, as if understanding that these humans were here to help. "My God," Mark breathed, taking in the scene. The trap was a cruel device, clearly designed to catch and hold large game. The fact that it had snared a young bear instead of its intended target made the situation even more tragic. The snow around the trap was stained, evidence of the cub's desperate attempts to free itself. Emma quickly assessed the situation, her mind racing through their options. The cub needed immediate help, but approaching a trapped wild animal, especially with its mother present, required extreme caution. "Sarah, get the medical kit ready. Mark, keep watch on the perimeter. Something tells me whoever set this trap might still be in the area." The mother bear watched intently as Emma slowly approached her cub. Years of working in these mountains had taught her to respect these magnificent creatures, but never had she experienced such a profound connection with one. The bear's trust in bringing them here, in allowing them near her injured offspring, was unprecedented. As Emma carefully studied the trap mechanism, she heard Sarah's sharp intake of breath. The sound of breaking branches echoed through the clearing. They weren't alone. The mother bear's head snapped toward the noise, but surprisingly, she remained calm, though alert. The atmosphere in the clearing shifted from tense to electric. Movement caught their eye at the tree line. A figure emerged from the shadows, and the situation suddenly became clear. This wasn't just about a trapped bear cub anymore. They were face to face with what appeared to be someone involved in illegal hunting activities. The person's stance was rigid, their expression a mix of surprise and irritation at finding law enforcement in their hunting grounds. Emma straightened up slowly, maintaining her composure despite the growing tension. The mother bear stood her ground, creating an unusual tableau. Law enforcement officers, a protective mother bear, her trapped cub, and a person who clearly hadn't expected to be discovered this way. The silence in the clearing was deafening, broken only by the soft whimpers of the trapped cub and the whisper of wind through the trees. Emma could feel the weight of the moment. They were standing at a crossroads where human law and natural justice were about to intersect in a way none of them could have anticipated. The person at the edge of the clearing took a step forward, and Emma could now make out more details: a weathered face, expensive hunting gear, and eyes that held a complex mix of emotions. This wasn't the hardened criminal they might have expected, but someone who seemed to be wrestling with their own conscience in the face of what they had done. The morning sun had risen higher now, casting long shadows across the snow-covered clearing. In this moment of confrontation, with the lives of both humans and animals hanging in the balance, Emma knew that what happened next would determine not just the fate of the trapped cub, but potentially the future of wildlife protection in their entire region. The hunter took another step forward, his boots crunching in the fresh snow. His face was set in a mask of defiance, but there was something else in his expression, a flicker of uncertainty that hadn't been there moments before. "This is private property," he declared, his voice gruff but lacking real conviction. "These bears have been causing trouble in the area. I'm doing what needs to be done." Emma remained steady, her years of experience helping her read between the lines of his bravado. "I'm Sheriff Emma Thompson," she responded calmly, "and regardless of property lines, illegal traps are prohibited in this county." She gestured toward the suffering cub, its small form shivering in the snow. "This isn't about property rights, and I think you know that." The mother bear, still maintaining her remarkable composure, shifted slightly closer to her cub, but showed no aggression. Her behavior seemed to unsettle the hunter, whose eyes kept darting between the adult bear and the officers. It was clear he hadn't expected this kind of situation. A calm bear, law enforcement, and his illegal trap all converging in one moment. "Look," he said, crossing his arms defensively, "you don't understand what these animals can do. They're dangerous. They threaten our livestock, our safety." But even as he spoke, his eyes lingered on the scene before him. The mother bear's gentle presence, her trust in these humans to help her baby, the obvious pain of the trapped cub. Sarah stepped forward, her voice firm but understanding. "Sir, I've lived in these mountains my entire life. These bears aren't the mindless threats you're making them out to be. Look at this mother. She came to us for help. She trusted humans enough to lead us here, despite knowing we could be dangerous to her and her cub." The hunter's posture stiffened, but something in Sarah's words seemed to reach him, his gaze fixed on the mother bear, studying her with new eyes. The animal's behavior defied everything he'd convinced himself about these creatures. There was no blind rage, no mindless aggression, just a mother's desperate attempt to save her child. Mark, who had been quietly observing the situation, added his perspective. "If they were really the threat you claim, this mother would have attacked us the moment we got near her cub. Instead, she's showing more restraint and intelligence than many humans would in the same situation." "Jait!" A heavy silence fell over the clearing. The hunter's expression changed subtly, the hardness in his eyes softening almost imperceptibly. He watched as the mother bear gently nuzzled her trapped cub, her actions speaking of a love and concern that transcended species. For a moment, his carefully constructed justifications seemed to waver. Emma saw the change in his demeanor and pressed forward carefully. "We need to help this cub," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "And then we need to talk about the other traps you mentioned. This isn't just about today. It's about preventing more suffering in the future." The hunter's shoulders sagged slightly, the first real sign of his resolve cracking. He looked around the clearing, taking in the scene as if seeing it for the first time. The worried mother, the suffering cub, the officers who had followed a bear into the wilderness simply because she asked for help. The morning light filtered through the trees, casting everything in a clarity that seemed to strip away pretense. He started, then paused, struggling with words that seemed to surprise even him. I know how to release the trap safely. Let me help. The admission seemed to cost him something, but also appeared to lift a weight from his shoulders. The mother bear watched intently as the hunter slowly approached, his movements careful and measured. Emma and her deputies maintained their positions, alert but allowing this moment to unfold. The hunter knelt in the snow beside the trap, his hands steady despite the enormous bear standing just feet away. As he worked to release the mechanism, his face revealed a complex mix of emotions: shame, regret, and something that looked like the beginning of understanding. The mother bear's constant presence, her unwavering patience, and her trust in these humans seemed to be affecting him deeply. The sun climbed higher in the sky, its light catching the crystals in the snow and creating a sort of natural spotlight on this unlikely group: law enforcement officers, a hunter questioning his choices, and two bears who had managed to bridge the gap between wildlife and humanity in a way that would change everyone involved. The hunter's experienced hands worked carefully on the trap mechanism while everyone held their breath. The sound of metal clicking against metal seemed unnaturally loud in the hushed clearing. The mother bear remained remarkably still, her eyes fixed on her cub, exhibiting a level of trust that continued to amaze everyone present. Almost there, the hunter murmured, more to himself than the others. His initial arrogance had melted away, replaced by focused concentration and what appeared to be genuine concern for the injured cub. As he worked, he began speaking softly, his voice heavy with emerging remorse. "I've been doing this for years," he admitted, his hands steady on the trap. "Telling myself it was necessary, that I was protecting the community." He paused, glancing up at the mother bear, who watched him with those intelligent eyes. "Never thought I'd see something like this, never thought they could be so aware." Emma observed the man carefully, recognizing the genuine transformation taking place before her eyes. This wasn't just about one trap or one bear cub anymore. She could sense there was more to this story, more that needed to be revealed. The trap finally sprung open with a harsh metallic snap, making everyone flinch except the mother bear, who remained remarkably composed. The cub immediately tried to scramble away, but its injured paw made movement difficult. The mother approached, slowly, gently nuzzling her baby, while the humans stepped back to give them space. Sarah quickly retrieved the medical kit, and to everyone's surprise, the hunter spoke up. "I know a bit about treating injured wildlife," he offered hesitantly. "Used to work with a wildlife sanctuary years ago before." He trailed off, the weight of his choices visible in his expression. As they worked together to treat the cub's injury, the hunter's expertise became evident. His gentle handling of the young bear and his knowledge of proper care suggested a past very different from his current activities. Emma saw an opportunity to understand more. "You clearly know these animals better than most," she said carefully. "What changed? Why turn to illegal trapping?" The hunter's hands stilled for a moment, his face clouding with what appeared to be a mix of shame and resignation. "It's not as simple as just me and my traps," he said finally, his voice low. "There's more to it. A whole network of people involved in this kind of activity across the region." The revelation hung heavy in the cold morning air. Mark and Sarah exchanged significant looks, while Emma maintained her focus on the hunter. She could see the internal struggle playing out on his face, the weight of secrets he'd carried, decisions he'd made, and the unexpected moment of clarity brought about by a mother bear's trust. "They won't be happy about this," he continued, gesturing to the freed cub. "There's money in it, lots of it, but seeing this," he looked at the mother bear tenderly grooming her cub's wounds, "it makes you question everything you've convinced yourself is right." As the morning progressed, the hunter began sharing more details about the larger operation, his words coming easier, as if unburdening himself of a heavy load. He spoke of other trap locations, of plans and meeting points, each revelation making it clear how extensive the illegal hunting network had become. The mother bear and her cub remained nearby, the young one's paw now carefully bandaged, its movement already looking less painful. Their continued presence seemed to affect the hunter deeply, his eyes frequently returning to them as he talked, as if drawing strength from their extraordinary display of trust and intelligence. Emma listened carefully, her mind already formulating plans to address this larger issue. But she also recognized something remarkable happening, the transformation of someone who had lost his way, finding his way back through an unexpected encounter with the very creatures he'd been working against. The sun climbed higher in the sky, warming the clearing despite the winter chill. What had started as a strange morning of following a bear through the woods had evolved into something far more significant, the unraveling of a major illegal hunting operation, all because a mother bear had the courage to seek help and the wisdom to know who to trust. The transformation in the clearing continued to unfold as morning gave way to early afternoon. The hunter, who had finally introduced himself as Robert Miller, sat on a fallen log, his shoulders lighter as he shared more information with Emma and her deputies. His knowledge of the local wilderness and the illegal hunting operations was extensive, and with each revelation, the scope of their discovery grew larger. "There are more traps," Robert explained, his voice tinged with regret. "Not just here, but throughout the surrounding valleys. They have them strategically placed near known wildlife corridors." He paused, watching as the mother bear continued to tend to her cub nearby. "I can help you find them all." Sarah had been documenting everything, her notepad filling with locations and details. The mother bear's presence seemed to serve as a constant reminder of why this information was so crucial. The magnificent animal had settled near them, keeping her cub close, while maintaining a peaceful vigilance that continued to challenge everything Robert had previously believed about these creatures. "The network extends into neighboring counties," Robert continued, his voice growing stronger with each admission. "There are drop points, scheduled pickups, people who handle the distribution." He trailed off, then added quietly, "I want to make this right. These animals deserve better." Emma nodded, recognizing the sincerity in his words. "Your help could make a real difference, Robert, not just for these bears, but for all the wildlife in the region." She glanced at the mother bear, who seemed to be listening to their conversation with those intelligent eyes. "This mother trusted us enough to ask for help. Maybe it's time we proved worthy of that trust on a larger scale." Mark, who had been monitoring the cub's condition, reported that the young bear was showing signs of improvement. The bandages were holding well, and the little one had even managed to take a few tentative steps. The mother's constant attention and gentle encouragement was touching to witness, breaking down even more of Robert's long-held misconceptions about these animals. "I never thought I'd say this," Robert admitted, watching the bears interact. "But there's so much we don't understand about them. All this time, I was looking at them as threats, as targets. But look at her." He gestured to the mother bear. "She's more than just an animal. She's a mother protecting her baby, smart enough to know she needed help, brave enough to trust humans despite everything we've done." As they planned their next steps, the group decided to establish a temporary observation post nearby. They needed to monitor the cub's recovery while also beginning the process of locating and removing the other traps. Robert's knowledge would be invaluable in this effort, and his eagerness to help seemed to grow with each passing hour. The mother bear appeared to understand that they were there to help, maintaining a remarkable calm as they moved around the clearing, setting up their temporary base. Her behavior continued to fascinate everyone, especially Robert, who found himself sharing stories about his earlier days working with wildlife before he'd taken a darker path. "I used to love these mountains," he reflected, his voice soft with remembrance. "It used to feel like I was part of something bigger, something important. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that." He looked at the bears, then back at Emma and her deputies. "But this feels like a second chance." Emma understood the significance of the moment. What had started as an unusual morning call had evolved into something that could potentially transform their entire region's approach to wildlife protection. Robert's willingness to help, sparked by this extraordinary encounter, could lead to real change. The afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows across the clearing. The cub had fallen asleep, tucked safely against its mother, while the humans continued their planning. There was much work to be done, but they had made an important start. The mother bear's brave decision to seek help had set in motion a chain of events that would ripple far beyond this single clearing. As they worked, the atmosphere in the clearing had transformed from one of tension to one of shared purpose. The barrier between human and animal seemed to have blurred, replaced by a deeper understanding of their interconnected roles in these mountains. Even Robert, who had spent years on the wrong side of that divide, was beginning to see things differently. The next few days at Pine Valley brought a flurry of careful but determined activity. Robert's decision to help had opened the door to a comprehensive effort to protect the local wildlife. Each morning, he would meet with Emma and her team at the station, mapping out locations of known traps and sharing crucial information about the illegal hunting operations. The mother bear and her cub had been relocated to a safe area nearby, where wildlife experts could monitor their recovery while maintaining their natural freedom. The mother's extraordinary behavior had inspired a deeper respect among the local law enforcement, leading them to establish new protocols for wildlife encounters that emphasized understanding over confrontation. "Here's another cluster of traps," Robert said, marking a spot on the map spread across Emma's desk. His knowledge was proving invaluable, and with each passing day, his commitment to making amends grew stronger. "They're mostly concentrated in these valleys, especially near the water sources where animals gather." Sarah had taken charge of coordinating with neighboring jurisdictions, her experience with the local wildlife adding credibility to their efforts. "The response has been overwhelming," she reported during one of their morning briefings. "Other counties are starting to find similar patterns. This is bigger than we initially thought." Mark spent his time between monitoring the bear's recovery and helping to document the removal of traps. The mother bear's trust hadn't wavered. She seemed to recognize them as allies now, maintaining a calm presence even as they worked near her and her cub. The young one's paw was healing well, its playful spirit returning more each day. "It's amazing," Mark commented one afternoon, watching the bears from a safe distance. "A week ago, I would never have believed we'd be working alongside a grizzly to protect these forests. She's changed how we see everything." Robert, who had once been on the other side of this equation, found himself experiencing a profound shift in perspective. Each trap they removed felt like a step toward redemption. "I keep thinking about that morning," he shared with Emma as they hiked to another location. "How she came right to the station, knowing somehow that we would help. These animals understand so much more than we give them credit for." The work wasn't without its challenges. The extensive network of illegal hunting activities had deep roots in the region, and dismantling it required patience and careful planning. But the team had found an unexpected ally in public opinion. The story of the mother bear seeking help had spread through the community, touching hearts and changing minds. Local residents began coming forward with information, sharing stories of suspicious activities they'd observed but hadn't known how to report. The station set up a dedicated hotline, and tips started flowing in regularly. Emma's team worked methodically, building a comprehensive case while continuing their efforts to protect the wildlife. "People are starting to see these animals differently," Sarah observed during one of their debriefings. That mother bear did more than save her cub. She showed us all a different way of thinking about our relationship with wildlife. Robert found himself becoming an unexpected advocate for wildlife protection. His first-hand knowledge of the illegal hunting operations, combined with his growing understanding of the animals he once targeted, made him a powerful voice for change. The transformation in him was so complete that even the most skeptical members of law enforcement had come to trust his commitment. The mother bear and her cub became symbols of this new approach to wildlife management in Pine Valley. Their regular presence near the safe zone, visible but independent, served as a reminder of the delicate balance between human intervention and natural freedom. The cub grew stronger each day, its injured paw healing under the watchful eyes of both its mother and the humans who had helped save it. Emma noticed how the energy in the station had changed since that winter morning. The usual routine of small-town law enforcement had been infused with a sense of larger purpose. Officers who once viewed wildlife calls as nuisances now approached them with newfound respect and understanding. The mother bear's brave action had sparked a chain reaction that was reshaping their entire community's relationship with the wilderness. As winter's grip on Pine Valley began to soften, the impact of that extraordinary morning continued to spread throughout the community. The small police station, once focused primarily on routine small-town matters, had become the center of a growing movement for wildlife protection. Emma's office walls were now covered with maps marking the locations of discovered and removed traps, each X representing a small victory in their ongoing mission. Robert had become an integral part of their team, his transformation from hunter to protector serving as a powerful example of change. His deep knowledge of the forest, once used for harmful purposes, now proved invaluable in their conservation efforts. "Each trap we remove," he explained during a community meeting, "is another chance for these animals to live freely in their natural habitat." The mother bear and her cub had become local celebrities of sorts, though Emma and her team worked hard to ensure they maintained their wild nature. The young one's recovery had progressed remarkably well, its playful antics in the safe zone bringing smiles to even the most hardened skeptics. The mother's continued presence, always watchful but peaceful, served as a daily reminder of the intelligence and dignity of these magnificent creatures. Sarah had established a new wildlife response protocol, incorporating the lessons learned from their unique experience. "We need to approach each wildlife encounter with an open mind," she explained to a group of officers from neighboring jurisdictions who had come to learn from their experience. These animals aren't just random forces of nature. They're intelligent beings capable of complex behavior and emotions. The community's perspective had shifted dramatically. Local schools began incorporating wildlife education into their curricula, with Robert occasionally visiting classrooms to share his story of transformation. Children were particularly captivated by the tale of the mother bear, who had been brave enough to seek human help, and their enthusiasm spread to their families. "My daughter won't let me set even a small trap for rabbits in our garden anymore," one local farmer shared during a town hall meeting. "She says we need to find a way to live alongside all animals, just like the police did with the bears." And you know what? She's right. Mark had taken charge of documenting their progress, creating detailed reports of their successful interventions and the positive changes in wildlife behavior since removing the traps. The number of negative human-wildlife interactions had decreased significantly, while sightings of healthy animals in their natural habitats had increased. One particularly touching moment came when they discovered another bear family using a trail that had previously been riddled with traps. "They're returning to their traditional territories," Robert observed, his voice thick with emotion. "They can sense it's safe again." Emma found herself reflecting on how much had changed since that winter morning. The station's relationship with the community had deepened, built on a shared commitment to protecting their natural heritage. Even those who had initially been skeptical of their wildlife protection efforts had come to appreciate the balance they were achieving. The mother bear's regular visits to the edge of town had become peaceful encounters that demonstrated the possibility of coexistence. She would appear occasionally with her cub, now growing stronger and more confident, as if checking in on the progress of their human allies. Their presence never failed to draw attention, but it was attention tinged with respect rather than fear. Local businesses had begun adapting their practices to be more wildlife-friendly, with Robert consulting on better ways to secure trash and food storage. The Pine Valley Diner even renamed their breakfast special the Mother Bear, with a portion of the proceeds going to wildlife protection efforts. As spring approached, the transformation of Pine Valley was evident in both large and small ways. The fear and suspicion that had once characterized their relationship with wildlife had been replaced by a sense of shared responsibility and respect. The mother bear's brave decision to seek help had set in motion changes that went far beyond the rescue of her cub. It had awakened the community to a new way of living alongside their wild neighbors. The success of Pine Valley's wildlife protection program had begun attracting attention from neighboring communities. Emma's station regularly received visits from other law enforcement agencies, eager to learn from their experience. The story of the mother bear who sought human help had become a powerful symbol of the potential for harmony between humans and wildlife. Robert, once known as one of the area's most skilled hunters, had found a new calling as a wildlife advocate. His expertise, combined with his personal story of transformation, made him particularly effective in reaching out to other hunters who might be involved in illegal activities. "I understand where they're coming from," he explained during one of the training sessions. "I used to think the same way. But that morning in the clearing changed everything." The mother bear and her cub continued to thrive in their natural habitat. Wildlife experts monitoring their progress reported that the young one's injured paw had healed remarkably well, leaving only a slight trace of its ordeal. The mother's legendary intelligence had become a subject of study, with researchers impressed by her continued peaceful interactions with the community. Sarah had developed a comprehensive training program for law enforcement officers, incorporating their unique experience into a broader framework for wildlife management. "The key," she would tell her trainees, "is understanding that these animals are capable of rational behavior and emotional connections. That mother bear showed us that they can distinguish between threat and help." The transformation of Pine Valley extended beyond just wildlife protection. The community had developed a new sense of pride in their role as stewards of the natural world. Local businesses adapted their practices. Hiking trails were redesigned to better accommodate wildlife patterns, and education programs flourished. Mark's documentation of their progress had grown into an impressive collection of success stories. "We're seeing patterns we never noticed before," he shared during a community meeting. "The animals are establishing new territories, families are growing, and conflicts with humans have decreased dramatically. It's like they know we're trying to help." Emma found particular satisfaction in watching the younger generation embrace their new relationship with wildlife. Children who once feared the forest now spoke excitedly about animal tracks they'd identified or bears they'd spotted from a safe distance. The local school had even adopted a bear cub logo, inspired by their famous young resident. Robert spent more time in the field than ever, but now his keen eye for animal behavior was used to protect rather than hunt. He worked closely with Emma's team to identify areas where wildlife corridors needed protection and help design safe passage routes that would keep both animals and humans out of conflict. The mother bear had become something of a local guardian, occasionally appearing at the edges of town as if checking on her human allies. Her presence never failed to draw attention, but now it was met with camera phones and excited whispers rather than fear. She seemed to understand her role in this new arrangement, maintaining a dignified distance while remaining a visible reminder of their success. One morning, as Emma arrived at the station, she found Robert already there, examining their progress map with a thoughtful expression. "You know," he said without looking up, "I've been thinking about that day when she came to the station. She could have gone anywhere for help, but she chose law enforcement. It's like she knew exactly what she was doing." The observation struck Emma as particularly insightful. The mother bear's decision had indeed been remarkably precise. She hadn't just sought help, she'd sought help from those with the power to create lasting change. The intelligence behind that choice still amazed everyone who heard the story. As spring continued to unfold in Pine Valley, the changes they'd implemented began showing even more positive results. The removal of illegal traps had allowed wildlife populations to stabilize, and the new protocols for human-wildlife interaction had created a model of coexistence that other communities were eager to emulate. The arrival of warmer weather in Pine Valley brought with it a renewed sense of purpose to the community's wildlife protection efforts. The small police station, which had once been just another municipal building, had evolved into a symbol of positive change. Emma's team had successfully removed dozens of illegal traps from the surrounding forests, and their work was far from over. Robert's transformation continued to inspire others. His deep understanding of both the hunting world and wildlife preservation made him uniquely qualified to bridge the gap between different perspectives. "Every trap we remove," he would say during community meetings, "is a step toward healing our relationship with these magnificent creatures." The mother bear and her cub had become living proof of the possibility of coexistence. Wildlife experts observed how the young one had fully recovered, growing stronger and more confident under its mother's guidance. Their presence in the area remained consistent but respectful, maintaining a natural distance while occasionally appearing at the forest's edge as if checking on their human allies. Sarah had expanded her wildlife response training program to include practical experiences in the field. "See these tracks?" she would explain to visiting officers, pointing to distinctive marks in the soft earth. "This shows how the bears are using their traditional pathways again. Now that they're free from the threat of traps, they're reclaiming their natural territories." The impact of their work had spread far beyond Pine Valley's borders. Neighboring communities began reporting similar changes in wildlife behavior. Animals were returning to areas they had long abandoned, and human-wildlife conflicts had decreased significantly. The success story of Pine Valley had become a model for others to follow. Mark's detailed documentation of their progress had grown into a comprehensive study of wildlife rehabilitation. "What's most remarkable," he shared during a regional law enforcement conference, "is how quickly the animals adapted once we removed the threats. It's as if they were just waiting for us to make the first move toward peace." Emma found herself reflecting on how much had changed since that winter morning when the mother bear had appeared at their door. The incident had triggered not just a series of events, but a fundamental shift in how their community viewed its relationship with wildlife. The fear and suspicion that had once dominated these interactions had been replaced by understanding and respect. The local children had become enthusiastic supporters of wildlife protection, often participating in educational programs led by Robert and Sarah. They learned to recognize animal tracks, understand wildlife behavior, and appreciate the importance of preserving natural habitats. Their excitement had a ripple effect, influencing their families and spreading throughout the community. One particular morning, as Emma and Robert were checking on a recently cleared wildlife corridor, they spotted the mother bear and her cub in the distance. The young one had grown considerably, its injured paw showing no signs of its previous trauma. The mother's calm demeanor and watchful presence reminded them of how far they'd come. "You know," "What amazes me most," Robert said, keeping his voice low as they observed the bears, "it's not just that she knew to come to us for help. It's that she somehow understood we would need this lesson too. Her trust in us that day. It changed everything." The success of their wildlife protection program had attracted attention from environmental organizations and law enforcement agencies across the country. Pine Valley's approach to human-wildlife conflict resolution was being studied and adapted for use in other regions. The small town had become a blueprint for how communities could live in harmony with their wild neighbors. The mother bear's decision to seek human help had set in motion changes that continued to resonate throughout the region. Her story had become more than just a remarkable tale. It had become a catalyst for a new way of thinking about the relationship between humans and wildlife. The story of Pine Valley's transformation had become legendary in wildlife conservation circles. What had begun with a desperate mother bear seeking help at a small-town police station had evolved into a comprehensive model for human-wildlife coexistence. Emma's team had not only succeeded in removing illegal traps, but had helped create a new understanding between species. Robert, once part of the problem, had become one of the most respected voices in wildlife protection. His journey from hunter to conservationist resonated deeply with others who were beginning to question their own relationships with wildlife. "Every day," he would tell visitors to Pine Valley, "I'm reminded of that morning in the clearing, how one bear's trust changed not just my life, but an entire community's perspective." The mother bear and her cub continued to thrive in their natural habitat. Wildlife experts monitoring the area reported that the young one had grown into a strong and healthy juvenile bear, its early brush with danger now just a faint memory. The mother's legendary intelligence had become the subject of numerous studies, with researchers fascinated by her continued peaceful interactions with the community. Sarah's wildlife response program had become a model for other departments across the country. "What we learned from that mother bear," she explained during a training session, "was that these animals are capable of remarkable judgment and trust. They can distinguish between threat and help, and they remember those who prove worthy of their trust." The transformation of Pine Valley extended far beyond its geographical boundaries. Other communities began adopting similar approaches to wildlife management, creating their own versions of the programs that had proved so successful. The ripple effect of that winter morning continued to spread, touching lives both human and animal. Mark's documentation had grown into a comprehensive archive that served as a resource for other communities looking to implement similar changes. "The key to our success," he noted during a presentation to visiting officials, "wasn't just in removing the traps, it was in changing how we thought about our relationship with wildlife. That mother bear showed us a better way." Emma found particular satisfaction in watching how the younger generation had embraced this new paradigm. Children, who once might have grown up fearing wild animals, now spoke of them with knowledge and respect. The local schools had incorporated wildlife education into their regular curriculum, with field trips focusing on observation and understanding, rather than fear and distance. Robert spent more time than ever in the field, but now his expertise was devoted to protecting and understanding wildlife. He worked closely with Emma's team to identify and preserve crucial wildlife corridors, ensuring that animals could move safely through their traditional territories. His transformation had inspired others in the hunting community to reconsider their approaches. The mother bear had become something of a local guardian, her occasional appearances at the forest's edge treated with respect and appreciation rather than fear. She seemed to understand the role she had played in changing the community, maintaining a dignified presence that reminded everyone of the intelligence and grace of wild animals. One quiet afternoon, as Emma and Robert were reviewing maps of the newly protected wildlife areas, they spotted the mother bear and her cub in a distant meadow. The young one had grown remarkably, showing no signs of its early trauma. The mother's watchful presence remained as steady as ever, a living symbol of the trust that had transformed their community. "You know what I've realized," Robert said, watching the bears through their binoculars. "She didn't just save her cub that day. She saved all of us. From our fear, our misunderstanding, our prejudices. She showed us what was possible when we choose trust over fear." As spring continued to bloom in Pine Valley, the changes they had implemented showed no signs of slowing down. The removal of illegal traps had allowed wildlife populations to stabilize, and the new protocols for human-wildlife interaction had created a model of coexistence that continued to inspire other communities. The passage of time had only strengthened Pine Valley's commitment to wildlife protection. The small police station, where a desperate mother bear had once sought help, had evolved into a regional center for wildlife conservation and education. Emma's office now displayed photos documenting their journey, with the first image showing that fateful winter morning that had changed everything. Robert's transformation from hunter to wildlife protector had inspired a new generation of conservationists. Young people who had grown up hearing the story of the mother bear now sought his guidance in understanding and protecting wildlife. "Every time I take these kids into the forest," he would say, "I see the same wonder in their eyes that I felt when I first understood what that mother bear was trying to teach us." The mother bear and her cub had become living legends in the community. The young one, now fully grown, had established its own territory nearby, occasionally visiting the edges of town, just as its mother had taught it. Wildlife experts noted how this second generation seemed to share the same remarkable understanding of human boundaries and respect. Sarah's wildlife response protocols had been adopted by law enforcement agencies across the country. "What started as one bear's desperate plea for help," she explained during a national conference, "has evolved into a complete reimagining of how humans and wildlife can coexist. We're not just responding to wildlife encounters anymore. We're building relationships of mutual respect." The impact of their work continued to grow. Other communities reported similar success stories after implementing Pine Valley's approach to wildlife protection. The illegal trapping that had once threatened the region's wildlife had been largely eliminated, replaced by a network of protected corridors and sanctuaries. Mark's documentation project had grown into a comprehensive digital archive, preserving not just the history of their success, but the lessons learned along the way. "Each new generation needs to understand where this started," he would tell visitors exploring the archives. "How one mother bear's courage and one community's willingness to listen changed everything." Emma found herself mentoring young officers who had been inspired by Pine Valley's story to pursue careers in wildlife protection. "The most important thing we learned," she would tell them, "was that sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from the very creatures we once feared. That mother bear taught us more about trust and cooperation than any training manual ever could." Robert spent his days working with a new generation of reformed hunters who, like him, had found a better way to connect with wildlife. Together, they maintained the protected areas and wildlife corridors that allowed animals to move safely through their traditional territories. The forests that had once been dotted with traps were now sanctuaries of peaceful coexistence. The mother bear's legacy lived on in unexpected ways. Local businesses had embraced their role as stewards of the environment, with even the smallest shops implementing wildlife-friendly practices. The Pine Valley school system had become known for its innovative environmental education program, drawing students from across the region. One crisp morning, as Emma and Robert conducted their regular patrol of the wildlife corridors, they encountered something remarkable. The mother bear, now showing signs of age, but still maintaining her dignified presence, was accompanied not just by her grown cub, but by a new generation of young bears. She acknowledged their presence with the same calm intelligence that had first amazed them years ago. "Look at that," Robert whispered, watching the family group move through the forest. "She's not just passing on her genes, she's passing on her understanding of us. These young ones will grow up knowing humans can be trusted allies." The success of Pine Valley's wildlife protection program had become a beacon of hope for other communities facing similar challenges. The story of the mother bear who sought help at a police station had evolved into a powerful symbol of what was possible when humans chose to listen to and learn from the natural world. The story of Pine Valley had become more than just a local legend. It had evolved into a testament to the possibility of harmony between humans and wildlife. The small police station where it all began had been preserved as a reminder of that extraordinary winter morning when a mother bear's trust had changed countless lives. Emma, now regarded as a pioneer in wildlife protection, often found herself reflecting on how much had changed since that first unexpected encounter. The forests around Pine Valley had transformed from places of conflict into sanctuaries where both humans and animals could thrive. The illegal traps that had once threatened wildlife were now just artifacts in the local museum, serving as educational tools to remind future generations of the past they had overcome. Robert had found his true calling in life, dedicating himself to teaching others about wildlife conservation. His personal journey from hunter to protector resonated deeply with those struggling to find their own path toward environmental stewardship. "That mother bear," he would often say, "didn't just save her cub that day. She saved something in all of us, our capacity for compassion, our ability to change, our understanding of what's truly important." The mother bear and her family had become symbols of successful coexistence. Wildlife experts from around the world studied the unique relationship that had developed between the bears of Pine Valley and its human residents. The trust that had begun with one brave mother had been passed down through generations of bears, creating a population that maintained its wild nature while understanding the boundaries of peaceful interaction. Sarah's wildlife response program had evolved into a comprehensive educational initiative that reached far beyond law enforcement. "We're not just teaching people how to handle wildlife encounters," she explained during a training session. "We're teaching them how to be better neighbors to the natural world." Mark's documentation of their journey had grown into a nationally recognized archive of wildlife conservation success stories. Each photograph, each report, each piece of data tells part of a larger story, he would tell visitors. "It's a story about trust, transformation, and the incredible things that can happen when we open our hearts to understanding our wild neighbors." The impact of Pine Valley's transformation continued to ripple outward. Communities across the country sought guidance in implementing their own wildlife protection programs, eager to replicate the success that had begun with one extraordinary encounter. The model of cooperation and mutual respect that had emerged from their experience had proven that coexistence was not just possible, it was essential. One crisp morning, almost identical to that fateful day years ago, Emma and Robert stood at the edge of the forest, watching a new generation of bears move peacefully through their territory. The mother bear's legacy lived on in every confident step these animals took, in every peaceful interaction between humans and wildlife, in every protected acre of forest. "You know what amazes me most?" Emma said, her voice soft with reflection. "It's not just that she knew to come to us for help. It's that she somehow understood that by helping her, we would help ourselves. She showed us a better way forward, and we were wise enough to follow." Robert nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. The transformation they had witnessed, both in themselves and in their community, had been profound. What had started as a desperate plea for help had blossomed into a movement that continued to grow and evolve, touching lives both human and animal. The forests around Pine Valley now stood as a testament to what was possible when humans chose to listen to the wisdom of the natural world. The mother bear's brave decision to seek help had set in motion changes that would continue to resonate for generations to come, creating a legacy of trust, understanding, and mutual respect that grew stronger with each passing year. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting long shadows through the trees, Emma and Robert turned back toward town, leaving the bears to their peaceful morning routine. The story of Pine Valley had become more than just a tale of one remarkable encounter. It had become a blueprint for hope, a reminder that change was always possible, and that sometimes the greatest teachers came on four paws, showing us the way to a better future. Dear listeners, we hope the story of the mother bear and the transformation of Pine Valley has touched your hearts. This tale of trust, courage, and redemption reminds us that change is always possible when we open our hearts to understanding. To continue this journey of inspiring stories about the remarkable connection between humans and wildlife, we've prepared a special playlist you'll find by clicking to your left. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel and give the video a thumbs up. Every day we bring you unique stories that explore the complexity and beauty of life. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We'd love to hear how this story resonated with you. Together, we can create more stories of hope and transformation.